Day 7 in Syria, and we're going to talk about some of the people we got to help while we were there. That's all coming up on today's Hot Zone. Hey folks, I'm Chuck Holton, and I'm in Panama City today. I'm at a conference, so I'm in a hotel room overlooking Ancon Hill back behind me. That's well known to any of you who've ever been here in the military, especially. And right behind me was where the Panama Canal headquarters used to be. Well, it still is, but when the U.S. had it, they built the big headquarters building there. And but I want to talk about Day 7 in Syria. It was a really eventful trip, as you've known if you've been watching the podcast or listening. And this time I just want to I'll show you a little bit about what we did on Day 7. We just did some patrols up to the front line to kind of see what the situation was up there. And I want to talk a little bit about the threat from Turkish artillery, mortars, and drones. And then we're going to talk about the people that we helped while we were there. So first, take a look at some of what we did on the 7th day I was there.
So the FSA has a position about half a kilometer this direction off in the distance, and another one in front of us and another one off that direction. So we're right now surrounded on 3 sides by the Free Syrian Army. They've been firing mortars this direction, and we just had one land back behind us over here, and only one, so they're probably just doing what they would call reconnaissance by fire. They haven't really formed up these lines. I mean, they're not solid lines. They're very fluid right now, and that just means that the enemy could pop up behind us or anywhere at any time. So the YPG soldiers who are manning this position are not only having to worry about that, but they're also worried about the drone that's flying overhead right now. And they've started to change their tactics somewhat to avoid being detected by the drone.
Yeah, since the attack beginning in Sarikani and other places, we tried a lot of time to get our wounded and injuries from the conflict places. So we cannot. They bombed our vehicles, and also we are asking why they do that, because in the international court we have a right to protect for protection our vehicles, for protection our points, for protection for our stuff. So actually it was about airplane and drones. They targeted our point in Salahia village.
Airplanes and drones targeted your point in Salahia village.
Yeah, they are not sure about that. Maybe it's drone, maybe it's airplane.
Yeah, they don't know which one. That's fine.
Yeah, so two of their friends killed, and 5 of them are wounded.
These are medical workers?
Yeah, they are medical workers of their staff.
When did this happen?
First of all, our vehicle, it was far for a little bit of our point. They targeted our point, but all the windows broken of our vehicle, and 2 of our friends also, they get shocked of that.
So they targeted the clinic
point
as well.
Yeah, the clinic, the point.
Yeah,
like a medical point.
And where was that? In the village?
In Salahia village.
What would you do if every time you heard an airplane go overhead, you had to worry about your house vaporizing? That's what these YPG soldiers and the Kurds and the Syrians in this area have to deal with now, because Turkey has been dropping drone bombs on everything in sight practically. So what they're doing now is what we've done here with our vehicle. We park it under these trees, try to not be visible when we're outside, and definitely not be seen carrying a gun or anything like that, because the technology that the Turkish have is very close to U.S. technology. It's based on U.S. technology, and it's kind of unsettling, I have to say.
I saw like terrible things too many kids. They had injured like no legs, no arms, and we just look to them. We cannot do for them anything. Yeah, most of them families, civilians, and also they had military.
Okay, so several of the places that we visited up there, I've talked several times as we've gone through the last week of our trip to Syria about the threat from Turkish drones, airstrikes, things like that. You have to understand that us pulling out has created a space for ISIS to resurge in Syria. And many of them belong to the Free Syrian Army. The FSA is very brutal and is not abiding by any civilized rules of war or conflict or anything. And so one of the places that we went this day, the place got bombed right before we got there, and the bomb didn't go off. So it just stuck in the ground. That was not very exciting. And then not long after we left, it got bombed again, and that time the bomb actually went off. But as you know, we've already lost one of the FBR teammates to Turkish drones and Turkish drone strikes. It is very apparent that the Turks and the FSA do not care whether or not they're bombing civilians or military targets. They do not care if they're bombing ambulances. They have made a regular occurrence of bombing ambulances and medical facilities and medical personnel. And so these are war crimes, and they need to be called out. You're not hearing much about it on the news, but I promise you, these war crimes are taking place even as we speak over there in Turkey. All right, so let's move on. We got to help quite a few people. You guys were very generous. I had kind of put the call out before I left to let you know I was going, and people sent a lot of money to try to help people while we were there. So much that I couldn't help I couldn't get rid of all that money personally. But I just want to talk about some of the people we were able to help. In Hasaka, we were able to help a single woman who was living there. As you know, Hasaka is that city where all of the internally displaced people from further north are congregating. So there's very little in the way of resources there. There's very little water. And I ran into a woman that just came up to me and asked me for help and told me that she lived in a nearby house.
So one of the problems that we have when we try to help people out here is that it's like being the Pied Piper, and you get just hundreds of people that come running out, kids and everybody else, and it gets very, very difficult and actually dangerous to try to give anything away. So I have to be very sneaky about it. This house back behind me, the woman that lives there, you can see Mohammed is back there. He's giving her some money while I'm drawing the kids' fire with my camera. And that's money that was given by the Hot Zone podcast patrons to help people in Syria. These people here in Hasaka don't have food, water, electricity, or anything because it's all been shut off by the Turks. So they're running out of everything, and we're helping them every way we can. And that's it thanks to you, Hot Zone podcast patrons. Hey!
Oh, there was a 80-plus-year-old woman in one of the relief centers who had to flee with just the clothes on her back. We were able to help her with some of that money. There was a woman we met further north in Soda Village who was probably in her 60s and said that she was caring for her 8 grandchildren up there because all of her children had been killed. And so she was taking care of their children who were now essentially orphans. And so we were able to help her quite a bit. There were also this lady in the refugee camp, which we'll do a podcast about that next week. But this lady right here.
Okay, Hot Zonians, I just met a lady who gave birth 2 weeks ago to her baby amidst the bombs in Serkania, and she's now escaped to this refugee camp in Kurdistan. And some of the donations that you gave are going to go to take care of her and her 3 children for the next couple of months, most likely. Watch this.
So then I still had a bunch of money left over, and I already was getting ready to leave. And so what we did was we gave the rest of that money to the FBR team, and we used it to help buy blankets and food and medicines and water and mattresses and things like that for those 160,000 internally displaced people in Al-Hasaka. We did that through Bashir, and he's a great guy, very, very trustworthy, and really has a heart for the people. Here on this podcast, I want to do more than just tell you the news and show you what's going on, but I want to give you a chance to be able to help those people. And if you donated, I want you to know that you were able to make a big difference in the lives of a lot of people over there who are really, really hurting. And so it really feels good to be able to go there and help them directly. And you guys enable me to be able to help a lot more than I could just on my own. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about my book that just came out. It's called PROWESS, The Man You Were Meant to Be. And it's basically a takeoff of my book, Making Men, which was kind of a curriculum on what it means to be a man. And it's, you know, as I've gone around the country and the world speaking on the topic of making men, I've had so many of the same questions over and over and over again from guys who have heard my talk. And a lot of it has to do with young men coming to me and asking about things that I would call adulting. Like, how do I find a woman to marry? How do I woo a woman to marry? Well, you know, if you've been around teenage guys lately, I mean, teenage guys have always been kind of dorks, but one of the things that we've seen in the last 10 or 15 years is that guys spend so much time interacting with devices and video games and things like that, that it's really changed their abilities or hampered their abilities to be able to to make inroads with those very complex, delicate creatures we call women. And, you know, to do that very subtle dance that it takes to woo a female and make her fall in love with you. And part of it is just that, again, they just spend so much time interacting with devices that it's really changed the culture. But those time-tested things that guys before the internet had to learn how to do in order to meet a girl, before things like Tinder, you know, some of that knowledge I fear was being lost, because I've had so many questions from guys, you know, good looking, you know, guy that's got a lot going for him comes up to me and says, I just have no idea how to talk to girls. And you're like, really? Like a guy like you? So I wanted to answer some of those questions. But as I started doing that, I started realizing that it really goes back to when you take any special operations unit in the military, any unit at all really in the military, has a creed. They have an ethos that they've codified into a creed that they teach everybody in the unit. And so the Rangers have a creed, the Green Berets have a creed, the SEALs have a creed, everybody has a creed. And one of the reasons that they do that is to inculcate the new guys into their culture, to teach them what's really important and to help them understand the things that will make them be able to fight and win on the modern battlefield and create that esprit de corps and that sort of thing. And so the book really kind of morphed into a look at the concept of a personal creed and how we create our own personal creed so that we can display our prowess to the world. So I want to encourage you to go out and to get my new book, PROWESS, for the young man on your list, for the young lady on your list. One of the things that I've always been surprised at is how many women end up buying the books that I write for men and actually get something out of it. Because, you know, Making Men, for example, was a curriculum on manhood. But I got a lot of feedback from women saying, I'm going to teach this stuff to my daughters so that they will know what to look like, what to look for to find a good man. And if only I had read this book 10 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have made the terrible mistakes I made in choosing a husband or choosing a boyfriend or whatever. So I would encourage you not to rule out the young ladies in your life for this book as well. It's also got a series of letters in the back of the book that I wrote to just guys at different stages of life, because a lot of young men today don't have any male role models. They don't have an older guy to sit down with them and to say, you know what, here's what I learned when I was your age. Here's what I learned about manhood. Here's here's what you need to do to be successful in life. They just don't have those kind of mentors anymore. And so I wrote a series of letters to guys in different stages of life, like a guy whose parents split up, and a guy who is, kind of a failure to launch, sort of thing, where he's just sitting on their mama's couch and playing video games, that sort of thing, to try to pass along some of that wisdom from the old lions to the young lions. And so I would highly encourage you to check out the book. It's called PROWESS, The Man You Were Meant to Be. And so I really appreciate that. You can find the book on Amazon, but you can also find it on my website, which is livefire.us. And you go there, and there's a special right now on the book, a launch special. If you buy either the digital version or a signed hard copy, you'll get the audiobook for free. And so please check that out, share it with your friends, and it makes great stocking stuffers and Christmas gifts. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone today. It's been an amazing trip to Syria, and there's a whole lot more coming next week. So we'll see you then. Take care.